Good evening. Thank you for joining us again for a special 10th episode of Drinkshares Last Call. Tonight is a special edition because it's Ladies' Night on DLC. We are sans a Joe. He is out spending an evening with his own special lady, so we will be celebrating without him tonight, unfortunately.
And we hope that they have an excellent night together.
The sexiest of times for Brenda and Joe.
Very Twilight.
We drink to that. So tonight, if you're joining us, we're going to be talking about research. We are going to be talking a little about specific things that you ask us to talk about research-wise. We're also going to be talking about what is important to do research, regardless of what your story is about, how well acquainted you are with the topic and materials, and how little things you never thought you might need to research tend to end up needing researched. And we'll talk about that in more depth. But right now, we are going to go around and introduce ourselves, starting with Christine.
Woo! All right. I'm Christine Brennicke, also C. Brennicke. Oh, and I forgot my lower thirds, so I'll set that up at some point while you're not looking. And I'm author of 7 Shards, The Colors of Wine. Cheers.
Cheers. Kara.
And I am Kara A.C. Weston. I couldn't get my lower third to work. What are you going to do? And I'm the author of She is the End.
And I am your humble host for tonight, Rebecca Sleeber, the author of Proxy, which is currently funding on Inkshares. And I just noticed the other day they dropped the price, probably because no one's buying the book.
What? Wait, on your book? You got a price drop? Really?
Yeah. I don't know why, but it was like $7.99 the other day. So I don't know if it was a glitch or what. So it's even cheaper. So go buy more copies.
Is it still $7.99?
I don't know if it was a special or what. I've barely been on because you guys know I've been sick and I just started this new job, so I've barely been on Inkshares. But a friend of mine from Wattpad wanted the link to my book, and I went on there the other day to copy it, and it was cheaper. So go figure.
That's what it used to be back in my day.
Wait, $7.99 for the ebook or for the print?
I think so.
Huh. That is very interesting. Mm-hmm. You know, people should buy it then. Buy it while it's cheap.
Buy many.
You don't,
buy all of them.
I have never heard of a book getting discounted during its campaign.
Yeah, so I don't know if that means
curious. Are all the books discounted?
Maybe it was just a special. Maybe I don't know what was going on. Anyway, it might be totally back the way it was. But yeah, so go buy copies of Proxy. It's only got about 40 days left. So get that before you run out of time.
Oh, I spoke too soon. Oh yeah.
Did you look?
The search actually pulls up your book first now.
Woohoo!
So they improved the search at some point.
Praise.
Fantastic.
Praise
yeah, the search was pretty awful.
Gods. Good job,
looks
guys.
like it's $10 to me.
Okay, then it must have gone back.
Maybe it's cheaper for new readers or something.
Maybe. I don't know. It was probably a glitch. I just got on there for 5 seconds, and I didn't have time to explore or figure out any of the reasons. So regardless of the cost, it's worth it. It's amazing. It's a wonderful book.
They probably fixed it.
Probably. They're like, oh, crap. That's okay, because I'm not complaining. The more expensive it is, the more cut I get. So I'm okay with that.
Well, you don't get any of the money during your campaign.
No, but I do when it funds.
Yeah.
So I want it to fund for higher percentages because I'm greedy. But anyway, speaking of books, let's go around and talk about what we're reading, what we're currently drinking tonight. So back to Christine.
So this was a quick round. Okay.
I forgot secret question tonight.
That's okay.
So I think the secret question should be, what do we all secretly think about Joe that he's not here?
Oh. Can be nice things, I guess.
What's the best thing about Joe, and why are we going to miss him tonight?
Okay, Joe's really good at smizing.
Smizing.
Smiles with his eyes. And I'm drinking rose lemonade, which is not an alcoholic drink, but it's delightful, and I'm really excited about it because I used to buy this at a tea shop, which has since gone out of business, and I found it at Target the other week, and did like a little dance in the store because I couldn't believe it. And it's delicious. I recommend it.
It looks classy too.
It's so classy.
What's the brand on that?
Fentimans, and it's made in the UK.
So you know it's good.
Mm-hmm. And like good ingredients. Nothing crazy in there.
I have to look for that next time I go to Target. That's
really refreshing. Yeah, I like it a lot.
So I went back and forth on whether I was going to drink tonight, considering that I had had such stomach issues last week. But I really wanted a drink, so I'm gonna at least have one. We'll see what happens. But
Good luck
what are you
to
reading
you.
right now, Christine?
I'm reading The Battle for Oz, because that's the pick for the new book club syndicate, which everyone should go join, and we can all chat about it. And even if you're not in the syndicate, you can come onto the forum on Inkshares and talk to us about it.
Yeah, you should do that. You should join the book club syndicate, which is...
And you should join my syndicate, too. We just lost some members, and I want to get them back up there.
Oh, yeah, definitely join
While
Snarky
you're
Darks.
at it, just keep throwing money into the system. Just do it.
If for no other reason, join Snarky Darksy because they helped fund Proxy a little bit, and they are so far the only one of the syndicates who has done that. So
And we have the cutest name, so...
Snarky Darksy.
Yeah.
if you like humor and you like a little bit of darkness and you like them together in the same
Who
book,
doesn't like humor and darkness?
exactly.
Everybody
You need one to
loves
balance the other.
Universal things.
Together. Together. Yes.
So, okay, Carol, what are you drinking water again tonight?
I'm sorry, I am. I don't have my life together enough to have fancy drinks as, like, window dressing on my life. One of my kids twisted her ankle today, and it was just like, you know, so we're dealing with that.
That's
and
okay.
I don't have a fancy drink.
Your hair looks really cute today, so you got your life together a little bit.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. This is what I like to call not showering. I do it
That's
all
a
the time.
really cute pose.
Thanks. Yes, I'm drinking water.
Speaking of damaged children, did Rosie recover from her bludgeoning by Alex the other day?
Yes,
When
she did.
She decided to lay
She's-
behind him.
She's very tough.
Good.
She's
I'm
my
glad.
tough girl. She was like, she was like, it's okay, I'm fine, with tears coming down her face.
What a trooper.
And in stark contrast to my older daughter, who is like, Mommy, I'm bleeding, when she has like a tiny. It's a big contrast.
Calling
But
the
anyway,
National Guard.
Yes, I just finished Battle for Oz, as well as It's All Fun and Games. I read
So
both
since
of
you
them
guys
last week.
Since you guys are both reading that book, I know very little about that book, so why don't you guys take, like, I don't know, a minute to talk about, because it's based on Wizard of Oz stuff, right? So
Yes, yeah.
without being spoilery, if possible, how does it contrast from the original book? Or how does it play up the story from the original book?
Well, that's a good question that I need to research because I have not read the original books of
I haven't
either
either.
Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz, so I have no idea.
So
I
it
don't
combines the two together?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Oh, I
See,
did not
that's
know
the
that.
thing.
Very cool.
Well, and that's not a spoiler because it's on the back of the book. It's in the, like, synopsis that Dorothy and Alice have to team up together.
That's cool.
Which is it's very cool, yes. And I have no idea how much stuff she took from books and how much stuff is made up. Like there's a lot of pretty cool stuff in there, and some of it is kind of so it gets a little steampunk later, which I wish there had been more steampunk in the book.
I love
Because it adds this layer on top of everything that's happening that's really cool. And I wish there had been more of it. But there's a hint at the end of a possible sequel, so maybe there will be a sequel. I don't know.
Yeah, speaking of steampunk stuff, that's actually what I just started a new book by Jim Butcher. He just started a new series. Now I completely forgot the name. The Aeronauts Windlass, I think is what it's called. And it is his new attempt at a steampunk series because he has his Dresden Files, which is urban fantasy, and he had the fantasy series, which was like 6 books. Now I can't remember the name of that either. But yeah, the Aeronauts Windlass is now his version of steampunk, so I'm pretty excited about that. So, and then I am drinking. Strongbow has, I don't know if it's for summer or what, but they have a cherry blossom flavored apple cider. So that is what I am drinking tonight. It's pretty good.
I forgot to say my favorite thing about Joe.
Oh yeah, what's your favorite thing about Joe?
Well, this could go on forever because I like Joe the best. He's the best. I think probably what I like most about him is that I can always go and complain to him about things that are going on, and he always just gets what I'm annoyed about. He's you know, like we're on the same wavelength with like things that are reasonable and things that are unreasonable. or things that are like driving me nuts. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Joe, and his book is good too. You guys, like, I can't downplay that. He is a good writer, and his book is going to be great whenever it comes out.
Which that means a lot coming from Kara, because she was so bitter about the fact that he didn't have a story when he won the contest. So if you guys don't know
I
that,
just think, like, I want everybody to
amazing
know
shout-out.
he had not written his stinking book, and he won a stinking contest. Jerk. No,
Right?
no, it's fine. It's just, like, when you do that sort of thing, it's the sort of thing where, like, you think, okay, what is he going to come up with? You know, is this going to be the sort of thing where you read it and you're like, ouch, you know, like, painful for Drinkshares to have to publish that. No, it's excellent. It's excellent.
See, my favorite thing about Joe is the fact that he sets up all the tech stuff. And so we don't have to worry about that, and we are super spoiled, and we all just show up at the last minute, and we click the links, and it happens. So I'm going to miss Joe because that did not happen tonight.
Yes, I know.
He actually did a lot of the work tonight for being not here.
Yeah.
He did. He set it all up, and we still
screwed it up.
What do you
I don't
do?
Just different.
I don't think he
Oh, well.
anticipated that Dropbox would try to link to me instead of his Zencaster account, so it's whatever.
Whatever. We don't care.
Yeah.
We're moving
We're
on.
gonna persevere because we're resourceful, because we're like that. Because it's
'Cause
ladies'
it's
night.
ladies'
We're feeling
night.
all right.
We feeling fine for what night?
So, but other than that, I am gonna miss the point where Joe hits his 3-beer idea.
Oh.
And his
Are
dry, random wit.
Are you drinking tonight, Becky? I forget.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
okay,
I.
so
only
yes,
real
you-
drinker.
Yeah, the one that probably should not be drinking is the one drinking tonight. So that makes a lot of sense.
Well, just
Good
get up.
life
Just
choice,
sleep in.
Becky.
Sleep in tomorrow.
All right, so we are going to talk tonight about research and why it's important, even if you are writing a story that you feel like you are a complete expert in the area that you are writing your topic on or your genre, whatever specific subject area you are trying to write about. I guarantee you at some point you're going to have to do research on something. Even I am a history teacher. I've been teaching, I'm going into my 5th year teaching, so I have a bachelor's degree in history. I have many hours of observation of historical stuff, of teaching stuff, of experiencing stuff. I've gone on trips. I've watched many documentaries. I've read many books. I have lots of experiences, and yet there are still times when I have to sit down and think, oh crap, would this fit in my story? So I promise at some point we are going to have to break down, each of us as writers, and find something we're going to have to research. And most of the time what I have found is, even though I've had to do some fact-checking of my own knowledge to make sure that I remembered something exactly the way I thought I remembered it, it's the little stuff that I've noticed that I should have researched that I didn't. And I'm going to tell a story here that I was telling Christine about the other day, because the best example of why you should research things when you think that you shouldn't is just because you think you know something, there's always going to be somebody who knows a little bit more about it and is probably going to call you out on it, and it takes away credibility from your story. And my example of that is, I just offhandedly wrote a scene where I was having 2 characters play chess, and the only reason they were playing chess was I needed something for them to do while they exchanged dialogue, and I just put random chess moves in. And so I thought, okay, I know what this piece is, and I know how it moves, so I'm going to have them do this. And somebody read it, one of my beta readers, and was like, that is the dumbest chess move I have ever heard in my like, nobody plays chess like that. This is ridiculous. Have you ever played chess? And I was like, yeah, like in junior high.
Like once?
Yeah, like, I don't know, I learned at one point how to play chess. So that's the kind of stuff that readers will suspend their belief, especially if you're writing a fantasy or a science fiction novel, like any kind of speculative fiction. You think, oh, they're going to suspend belief. But that's because the world you've created is credible to them. It's believable. But if you throw in something where you have an actual real-world thing that doesn't make sense to them, it's going to totally throw off their reading perspective, and it's going to take them out of the story. And you don't realize that. So I kind of want to open the floor to you guys and ask, is there a similar situation that you have found yourselves in where you probably should have researched something and you didn't, and either you got called out on it or you fell into trouble in your writing because of it?
I haven't shared enough of anything to really get called out per se, at least not that I can recall. But I did spend, I think I spent 5 full years world building before I started writing Seven Shards, and probably about a third of that was research. And one of the things that I realized I needed to research like later on, which is probably a nothing thing to most readers, but could totally be distracting to people that know about plant life, is like I have different times where I might mention a type of tree that is growing in, like, when you're describing the setting. And I realized at one point I needed to make sure that, any plant life that I mentioned made sense for the climate and to be growing near each other if there was more than one species mentioned. So that's something I went through, like, after I had made some decisions in the early years of world building. I went back and changed a lot of that stuff because, certain readers, that would be totally distracting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it also kind of, like, what you talk about, you as the author direct the readers into focusing on different things. So, like, there are probably authors out there who don't care and would never mention various types of plant species, and they would never research it, and they don't care, and it's not what their book's about, and that's fine. But yeah, if you're gonna do it well.
Right. Yeah. And chances are I might only mention like 2 types of trees in the book, but it's good to have, when you need to pull that information for it to be accurate and thought, well thought beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best reasons I think to do research that I have found is whenever I have a block, if I research something, it starts to loosen the gears, like if they're bound up.
Yeah.
So the richer your knowledge of your world, of, like, for example, since mine is not only just like sci-fi, but it also has fantasy, mythology, and historical elements in it, because I have those 4 areas that I can tap into, not only if I hit a block do I have lots of things that I can read about to spark some kind of inspiration, but it also gives me a larger well of things that I can tap into when I do hit those blocks. And I think, oh, okay, now what am I going to write about? Well, I have 4 different areas that I can tap into. I can delve more into the mythology, I can delve more into the science, I can delve more into the history, or I can delve more into the fantasy aspect of it with my characters and their abilities. So the more you research and the more content knowledge you have into the areas of your book, the richer your content is going to be, which lends credibility to your story, but the better you are going to be equipped to not fall into the trap of writer's block, because you have so much that you can tap into. Mm-hmm. And I think that is probably the best reason to be well-researched, is because if you have this really deep well, then you're not going to fall into that trap.
Amen. Amen. Excellent case.
Thank you.
I was thinking, and I think I'm in a similar position to Christine, where I haven't shown my book really to enough people to get called out on anything, besides my husband. And we just more talk stuff out for what makes sense, because there's this concept. Let's see if I can pronounce this. Verisimilitude. Verisimilitude.
Yeah, I know. It's something having to do with truth, right?
Well, it the if something feels true, or like the essence of truth is coming through, versus like literal fact. Mm-hmm. So I would hopefully go for my story feeling like it's sincerely true, in how it's depicting, like, the ways that people would act and stuff, compared to just, being like an analogy for historical events or something, where everything lines up and the parallels are all there or anything. But yeah, historical stuff, that is a great place to get ideas, because stuff, if you can come up with it, it's probably happened in history.
Yeah, even if you're not specifically writing about a historical story or something that relates back to a historical point in time, there's that tired cliche, and as a history teacher I kind of hate it, that those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. but there is a factual element to that, and the fact that if you look at the things that, say, cause revolutions, for example, over and over and over, it's the same causes. It's the same people that are being disrupted. It's the same people that are being put into the similar types of plight. You know, they're losing similar opportunities. You know, when people rebel against something, it's usually for, like, one of, you know, 3 reasons. They're being limited in their ability to have some kind of voice in their government, they're starving, or there's corruption, and they want to stop it. You know, and I mean, there's obviously more cases than that, but more times out of not, whether it's ancient history or modern history, those are the reasons that people are going to want to rebel against a government. And so if you understand and go back and research why things have happened in history, you have a better understanding of the scenarios in which your story would lead up to the point in which you're writing about a revolution. So if you're writing a dystopian novel, you really need to understand what causes societies to collapse. And I'm not just bringing that up because that was one of the questions that got asked. So which, I do have a really long-winded answer to that for Rick, but we'll get to that later in the show. So another thing that I want to bring up too is that if you are writing about something that you're not super familiar with, you might feel like you have an understanding of it, but one area in which I feel like you should always be over-researched is anything having to do with another person's culture. So if you are writing about a part of the world that you are not originally from, no matter how many times you visited it, how many times you've studied it, how many times that you have experienced people who are from that part of the world, you are not 100% on that culture, on what makes those people think, act, and experience all of the things that they do. So the best thing you can do if you're writing about diverse characters, which I hope you all are, is to research the backgrounds of those characters before you start writing them, because that's the best way to avoid stereotypes, and it's the best way to avoid offending people. Now, as Kara said, things don't have to be 100% true. You know, if you're writing about an aspect of history and you're trying to link it up with something that's going on in your story, you can fudge facts a little bit. But I'm glad that she brought up the fact that it just has to feel true. It doesn't have to be true, as long as there is credibility. I'm going to use that word a lot tonight, because the reader wants it to feel credible. It doesn't have to be 100% factual, but if they believe it, because chances are they're not going to go out of their way to research something they don't know about. They're going to trust you on face value. So if it feels true, they're going to believe, and they're going to suspend belief long enough for them to continue on with the story. But I just wanted to put that out there, is that if you are talking about society in some way or culture in some way, you have to do your fact-checking. Because even if you think you know everything about that culture, you are going to get something wrong, and somebody's going to be upset. And I know that we can't make everybody happy 100% of the time, but you need to go out of your way to try your very best to have accurate representations of people that are not like you.
Well, and part of the deal is that you just have to, if you're going to write about anybody that you're not, anything outside of your own experience, you just have to accept and be prepared to be called out on things, the ways that you do it wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, don't assume that if you just work hard enough and research hard enough, you'll be able to insulate yourself from all criticism. It's gonna happen. Just be prepared for it. Accept it as part of the deal when you're writing outside of your realm of experience.
I mean, and that's true for your own culture too. You know, if you're writing about, you know, white middle class suburban culture, someone's still gonna be like, "That's not how it is."
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
So you're not going to totally get out of the trap of getting something wrong, and you have to accept that as a writer. And you know what? As a writer, you have certain creative liberties to be able to get stuff wrong, and get stuff wrong on purpose. Because if something needs to be slightly wrong to fit your story, then that's the way it's got to be. But make sure it's something that can be bent and not broken. Because if you choose the wrong thing to make a little flexible, yeah, you're walking a fine line there.
Well, you know, the context that I was reading about the concept of verisimilitude that I mentioned earlier was in pseudo-historical, like not real historical fantasy stuff, you know, just medieval times, you know, stories that aren't actually based on any historical periods whatsoever having so many instances of sexual assault against women. And it was talking about how that just feels right to the readers. It just feels like of course that's the way it was. It just feels true. And yet, you know, it doesn't necessarily have a link to reality, and also it's a historical fantasy world that is not a place on Earth that was ever in existence in any time period, so it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can challenge what people feel like. Just, yeah, of course, every single woman in existence got assaulted multiple times in her life, and that was just normal, and we just gloss on over it. That's normal, you know, like, you could challenge that, and it can still be a story that is sincerely told, and people should take it as
especially
it is, you know?
if it has no bearing on the plot of the story. Like, if you're just throwing it in because you feel like it's historically accurate, like, why would you just want to throw in a rape just for the sake of, like, oh, we'll just spice it up with a little bit of rape over here? You know, like, so
Well,
just
you know why.
Well, yeah, I know why. We know why.
We know why.
It wouldn't be ladies' night if we didn't know why. But, don't just throw in stuff because it's historical if it has no bearing on your story, you know?
Right, yeah. Write your story and, like, think critically about it. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So now that we've talked about all the reasons why you should research, let's talk about some of the ways in which you can do that. Because most people think, oh, okay, I have the internet. I can do all of my research. I can literally write a story without ever leaving my house, which cracks me up because I always think of the movie The Decoy Bride with David Tennant and the chick that voiced Merida. I can't think of her name. She's a Scottish actress.
Good. It's not Kate.
No.
Not Rose. It's Kate. Isn't it Kate?
It might be. I don't know.
I know who you're talking about, though.
She's not in enough stuff for her to be a name.
She was in No Country for Old Men, too.
Oh, was she? I didn't know she was in that. I know she's on Boardwalk Empire. But she's really fun, and she has a glorious Scottish accent, and I like her a lot. But she ends up running around David Tennant the whole movie, and David Tennant's character is an author, and he wrote an entire book about the island in Scotland that she lives on, but he never actually visited the island at all. And so she calls him out halfway through the movie because he doesn't know anything about the island, and he got everything wrong because he basically just wikied it and Googled everything. So one of the things that we put on here is Wikipedia is a decent resource to start with. As a teacher...
Wait, can I say a side note? Sorry, my comments won't go into the YouTube thing.
Oh, okay.
It keeps saying message not sent, error, try again. And I just wanted to respond to Evan, who said raping and pillaging was a thing, though. And my point is, if you're writing about a pseudo-historical time period that never existed on Earth, you're not bound by any historical limitations of how often anybody gets raped. You could have a story without rape, and it could be as historically accurate as you want. What?
So wouldn't that be wonderful if we could write stories without rape?
You could write a story that way, and it could be just fine, just the way it is. Mm-hmm. You don't have to include it. It doesn't have to be there.
And I think it's also important. I'm gonna step out. I'm gonna put my teacher hat on, my historical teaching hat on for a second, because I also want to point out the fact that while raping and pillaging, yes, was a thing that did happen, it was also a tactic used by the more civilized cultures to say that other cultures were barbaric. So a lot of the raping and pillaging that happened was stories that happened. So the Vikings weren't nearly as bad as people claim they were. They were actually really sophisticated people, but all you hear about is, oh, rawr, you know, like big horned hats and Viking axes and sea dragons and things like that. That they're just these marauding, pillaging, rebels. But
barbarians, right? Barbarians.
Yeah, barbarians. The word barbarian literally comes from Greek to mean not Greek. So anybody who wasn't Greek was a barbarian.
Like pagan.
Yeah, just like pagan, exactly. And so it became a bad word. So while, raping and pillaging was something that did happen, it was also something that, like, Romans would tell their children at night to, like, keep them to be good. Make sure you stay within the city walls, because if you get out with the Germanic barbarians, they'll do all these terrible things to you because they're uncivilized. So the only reason I put that on is because we're going to talk about sociology later, and it's really important to remember that when history was written, it was written by the winners. So sorry, I'm gonna take that hat off.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, you can go back to the point that you were making, though. Sorry, I didn't.
I don't remember what the point I was making.
What were you talking about?
Help me get back to what we were talking about.
What were you talking about?
That was.
You were talking about going out and doing research, right?
Yes.
Right.
So,
Yes. Physical research.
Yeah. So yeah, because I was talking about the decoy bird. Sorry. So yes, physically leave your house if possible. If the places you're going to write about exist, go visit them. If it's within your means. The book.
If it's within your means.
Yeah. If it's and you know
That's a good point.
You know, some people are going to write, you know, if I hopped down to St. Louis because I was going to write a story that took place in St. Louis, Missouri, that's an hour and 15 minutes from my house. But if I wanted to write about Athens, Greece, which I'm doing, the only reason I'm doing that is because I happened to be lucky enough to be able to go there while I was in college for one of the trips during my courses. Mm-hmm. So I've been to Rome, I've been to Pompeii, and I've been to Athens, which are all places that I've written about because I have physical experiences. I remember what they look like. I remember the smells. I remember what it felt like, the heat, the sun. I remember the sunburn I got. You know, so all of these things that you experience when you go to these places are important, not just to get a realistic vision of the place that you're trying to talk about, but they're incredible for when you're actually trying to write about them because you have sensory details to put in your book. And as you guys know as writers, sensory details are the key to writing realistic stuff. So if you can talk about what the streets smelled like, you know, the Vespas zipping by, and the little Fiats zipping by, and what the gas stations were like, and what the food tasted like, and hearing the different languages in your ears or walking down the street, and you trying to emulate those languages, you know, whether it's good or bad, how good you were at annexing some Italian while you were over there, or some Greek, which I found Greek was a lot easier for me than Italian. But these are all things that you're going to put back into your story whether you realize it or not, because they're going to be part of your experience and your memories when you're tapping into that to write. So if it's within your means, yeah, definitely visit the places that you want to write about. But then, you know, most of us, I think, especially people in the YouTube chat tonight, we all write speculative fiction. So how, as speculative authors, do you guys think, what's the best way to take physical places you visited and translate that into speculative fiction?
Well, I was going to say that one of the main reasons, besides thinking out how it would make sense logically in the universe, one of the main reasons I set the beginning of my book in Italy is because my husband has been there. I haven't really been very many places in this world, but at least he could tell me exactly everything that you were saying, what the streets are like, what the weather is like, how the landscapes look. And that was really, really valuable. And I also used Google Street View, and I picked an actual place, and I decided this is the place that the beginning of my book is set. And I went and I toured around in the streets using Google Street View, and I picked exactly where my characters go. Like, I could map it out. I know exactly where they go, and that's how I described it. Like, it's a real place. That all these, I mean, it's not a secret alien base is the thing.
Well, and there are lots of places. I don't know whether it's through Google Earth or Google Maps or whatever, but there are places that you can do complete virtual tours of through the Smithsonian, through different virtual places like the maps and things like that. So you can, to the best of your ability, visit a place without leaving your house. But something is lost when you do that. You get the visual, but you don't get the auditory, you don't get the sensory, things like that, unfortunately.
Christine, where are all your places? Like, what did you use for your locations in your book?
Lots and lots and lots of things. Like, everything is a mix of multiple things. And I don't know. It's such a complicated process, world building. It's just like layers and layers and layers of stuff, and then they kind of sort of start to congeal and become like their own thing over time. So, I don't know.
Because you spent years on it.
Yeah. I've spent longer world building than writing. So, but that's
do you
kind
feel
of like how it goes with epic fantasy.
do you feel like you have certain cultures that are represented by the different groups of people?
Totally. And none of them are like one culture only, but I didn't like do a lot of pulling like tit for tat from actual historic events. Because a lot of I don't know, it's really hard to describe my creative process. Like I usually have an idea of something and then I'll go looking and see if I can find something from history that matches it. Like if I get stuck on a point. And then I'll be like, oh, something like this totally happened. Oh, and here's this other cool detail that I could borrow. And it's just a very fluid process. But nothing in it is strongly based on one.
Which I think is good.
Only.
It's good to just not. I mean, I think Dune is pretty much an event by event retelling of a conflict that happened in
and a lot of great books do
people groups in Africa. I don't remember exactly where, but I remember reading that and being like, Frank Herbert, you just took a historical event and then changed the names and set it in outer space. Like, that's not fair. Yeah. But I guess, I mean...
that's very common,
people probably do that all the time.
I do it.
People probably do that all the time.
Yeah, I know, like the Game of Thrones books are very based on specific events in history. That's not how I roll.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that I didn't do any research, because I certainly did. It's just kind of the ideas came first, and then the research, and then it just goes back and forth, and things get layered.
Which is excellent.
And I think that builds a richer culture, too, for a fantasy world, that you are delving into multiple cultures and picking out what you like from each. Because there are so many cultures that have really rich, interesting things, but you get to a point where something in that culture is the opposite of what you need in your fantasy culture. So being able to pick out what you need, whether it's cultural values and mores, or conservative or more liberal things to fit your story, that's really good. So picking what you want here and there for speculative fiction, that's fantastic. You can't do that if you actually...
It's good to use it as like a logic check. It's like if you have an idea, you can then try to see if anything like that happens and be like, oh, I totally didn't think about this one aspect. Like, now I need to rework it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you don't have to.
Well, and you have to understand too that any real world culture isn't just something that they all just got around one day at a table and said, all right, let's build Persian culture. Right. It's not like they sat down and wrote down the blueprints. It's something that has also been layered upon layer for a millennia, a century, whatever, however long that civilization or that culture has existed. And so things have changed. Things have become more liberal. Things have become more conservative. People went through different phases of belief and things like that. So just like any real world culture, your fantasy culture is going to be a series of layers built upon layer through historical experience and things like that. So
yeah, I really like that about speculative fiction. Actually, it's one of the reasons why. When I was a teenager and we started my friends and I started our storyland of these planets and all these different characters, we wanted to do planets instead of setting it in 17th century France or something, because we wanted to just be able to make stuff up. Just make stuff up all over the place.
Did you have a writing group when you were younger?
Just me and a couple friends.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we were each going to write a different book set in this universe, and I'm the only one who actually, just working on it.
Well, once it's actually published, you can send it to them and be like, your turn.
Oh, I will, but I have changed a lot, and I don't, they can write their own things, if they want, but I don't want them to mess with my characters, unless they...
Well, yeah, it's yours now.
Yeah, this is very much my story.
Your baby.
It is my baby.
Yes. So beyond going to different places that you can visit, there are lots of other really great ways to experience and research the things that you want to write about. Obviously, if you live close to any metropolitan area, there's going to be a museum. Museums are a wonderful place to visit. I had the opportunity to visit museums in the countries that I have written about, which was a luxury. I've only ever been able to do it once. I got this close to going to the British Museum on that same trip because after we had 4 days in Rome and we had 4 days in Greece and we had a layover in Heathrow, and it was 9.5 hours, which was almost the length of the flight back to Chicago.
Itself?
The layover itself was 9.5 hours. So I was stuck in the United Kingdom for almost 10 hours and couldn't leave the airport. And I was like, it's just right there. Because we were with one
passport?
Well, no, it wasn't. I had a passport. I could have gone into the country. It was the tour group I was with didn't want anybody to leave the airport in case something happened. Because even though we were only an hour from London, they said, what if you get stuck in traffic? What if you get hurt? Something, and you wouldn't be able to make your flight back. You could have met Matt
Smith.
Tell me about it. So, okay, let's not bring up my bitterness for the fact that I was this close to Britain and I didn't actually get to leave international soil. But, yeah, so I could have gone and saw the Rosetta Stone. I had gone and saw the Parthenon, and yet I could have gone and seen the marbles that Lord Elgin took from the Parthenon, which is something I actually wrote about in my story. That's one of the things that trips Athena off, is the fact that she is sitting at the Parthenon looking at the desecrated ruins of her temple, and she snaps. So I could have gone and done that, but I didn't get a chance to. But that's bitterness for another day. But museums are a great place to go. Any kind of cultural place, national parks. Go visit national parks. The national parks in the United States are phenomenal. Go visit UNESCO World Heritage Sites.
Paul Inman to go to our local national park next time he visits PA. We'll see.
Did he not want to go while he was there?
I don't think he had time to. It wasn't. Well, it was actually really close to where we had lunch, but he didn't have the time allocated.
You and your fraternizing with other podcast hosts.
I know.
Shame. All right, this is gonna sound like a terrible history teacher question, but how close is Gettysburg to Philadelphia?
Should I know that offhand?
I don't know.
I'm gonna guess 3 or 4 hours.
It's 4 hours. Okay, that's a lot.
3, maybe it's 3. I don't know. I haven't been there actually.
So
I'm really close to Valley Forge. I've been to Valley Forge a lot.
Valley Forge is cool. So I just know that Gettysburg is a huge historical site out that way.
I have some people that have given me shit for not going there yet.
The things you're closest to are the things you don't visit. I live in the epicenter of Abraham Lincoln, and I still only ever went to do the museum when I went on a field trip with my students. And that was 10 years after the presidential library had been built. So
yes, visit your local museums
libraries.
and historic sites.
Oh.
And yes, libraries too.
And libraries.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, libraries, definitely.
I've been to a lot of Minnesota historical sites because Alex works for the Minnesota Historical Society, and he used to work at 3 different sites at once, and now he just works for one, but still, we go to them all the time. And it's really good, too, because, that's one thing that we haven't talked about yet, how talking about different, social dynamics or really intricate, expectations and rules for social interaction. That can be really cool stuff to bring in from different time periods and different cultures to apply to your speculative fiction races that you've created or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I've picked up a ton of really interesting, cool little quirky things. The rules for eating, rules for dressing, rules for how you, treat people below you or above your station, all sorts of things. You come up with all sorts of cool stuff. Historic sites are good.
And the best thing about museums and historic sites and things like that, a lot of them are free. A lot of them are. You might have to, make a donation sometimes, but that's usually up to you. They'll say, oh, you can get in with a $5 donation at least or something like that. So a lot of them are either really cheap or free. I know that the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., totally free. You can just walk in anytime and just look at all the most amazing stuff on the planet. Their Natural History Museum is incredible. So if you're in Washington, D.C. and you don't go to the Smithsonian, shame on you. You're a terrible human being. That's not a drunk opinion. That's just a fact. So
Not even a drunk opinion.
another cool thing about places like libraries and colleges and museums and heritage sites is you can actually talk to experts who know the stuff you want to talk about. And the next best thing about knowing it yourself and doing the research is going to somebody who is an expert, who spends all day talking about that. So if you really want to write a book that has to do with Gettysburg and you want to get the nitty-gritty on the details, go talk to one of the people that work at the park there and go on one of the tours, you know, and interview one of the people that spend their entire life dedicated to Gettysburg National Park or National Monument.
Or if you have like a medical issue in the book, talk to a doctor that would handle those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Talk to people that, you know, Kara works for the Department of Health, so she knows a lot about biology. I know a lot about history and different social studies aspects of culture and things like that, and religion, because I teach it all day. Joe is into technology, so he knows lots of stuff about coding and computers, and none of us really know what Christine does for a living, so she's just a Jane of all trades.
Christine reads tarot cards for a living.
I wish.
She's an enchantress for a living.
Yeah, actually, that was one of my anecdotes that I was going to tell, because I had this. There's a part in my book, read my book, where one of the characters gets into a fight with the bad guy, and he gets totally beaten up. And initially, I had set the scene so that he wasn't that beaten up, and the police come, and the bad guy gets away, and one of my main characters gets arrested. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, he doesn't speak English or any other language on Earth. He's hurt. Like, maybe they're going to charge him with something, but maybe not. So how would the process go? Like, what would his step-by-step in the police station, what would happen to him? And so I asked my stepdad, who's in the criminal justice system, and he started asking me all these really good questions to clarify what exactly is going on. And I mentioned that the kid is 17, and he was like, oh, well, if he's a minor, then
it's completely different.
Then it's completely different. And I was like, that didn't occur to me at all, that would entirely affect the way he went through the criminal justice system. So,
I'm glad you brought that up,
yeah.
because that is another really fantastic point that people do not think about. You know, they think about, oh, if I'm going to get pulled over and get a ticket, if I'm going to write about my character getting pulled over and get a ticket, and the whole process of that, oh, I've been pulled over before. I know exactly the protocol that you would go through. One of Wyatt's biggest frustrations in watching any movie, since he works for 911, is when a character calls 911 and talks to a 911 dispatcher.
Oh, yeah?
Or any kind of police protocol that has to do with the cops going to your house and just regular police dealings, because they always get it wrong. And most of the time it's for dramatized reasons. You know, it's because you have to make it so the person is hiding in a closet while the killer's in the house, you know, and things like that. And they don't give any
just always getting things like that wrong.
Yeah.
Across the board.
If you have anything like that in your story, you think, oh, I don't need to research that. I know how calling 911 works. No, you don't. You really don't. Because I've called 911 before, and the only reason that I did it right is because I had a husband who told me, when you call 911, these are the 5 things that I need off the top. Like, I need your name, I need your address, I need to know what's going on, I need to know all of these things. So when you write in a book that your character is calling 911 and screaming and doesn't want to cooperate, and do you know what happens when you do that? They hang up on you. I'm serious. You could be in the middle of an emergency, and if you're not cooperating with the call taker, and if you're harassing the call taker, they can hang up on you. That's legal for them to do. So if you want help, you have to tell them the facts. You have to tell them what you need, or else they can't help you. So don't be the person on the phone who's like, just send somebody now. Okay, well, who are you? What's the situation? And where am I sending my cops?
Send someone. Click.
Yeah. It's like, I need help. Like, we all do. So really, if you have some kind of protocol that happens in your story, like Kara said, you need to talk to somebody or you need to research and figure out how those protocols work.
Unless you don't care at all, I guess.
Yeah, unless you're a terrible writer.
Well, I've seen enough things where they were clearly just like, we don't care.
Yeah.
We don't care how it really goes.
Well, you know what? I'm sure it's the same way with any movie where there's ever been any kind of disease or outbreak, because I know that you're into, like, pathology and things like that, so I'm sure any movie that has to do with disease, you're always like, nope, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong.
Well, yes, obviously. But, like, the movie Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman is so wrong in so many ways, but it's so fun. I love that movie anyway. I don't even care, because you could just let it go sometimes and just enjoy yourself. But, like, the movie Contagion, I believe it's Contagion, with Kate Winslet and Matt Damon.
Which has the 12th Doctor.
That is set mainly in the Twin Cities. And there's a part where Kate Winslet of the CDC goes to the Minnesota Department of Health, where I work. I was, like, working in IDEPC, which is Infectious Disease Epidemiology Control and Prevention Division at the time. And the MDH people have to play the role of the stupid people who don't get it. And they don't understand what she's talking about. And I'm like, okay, movie makers, do you not realize that all of the MDH people are equivalently qualified to do public health work, like outbreak? Like, they're all doctors, well, not all doctors, but epidemiologists and doctors too. Just like the people from the CDC, they know just as much, they just work at the state level instead of the federal level, and they don't need stuff explained to them like that. But that's okay. I let it go because somebody had to be the audience surrogate. And I guess it's the Department of Health employees who don't understand basic outbreak.
Do you know what frustrated me about Captain America more than anything? As much as I loved that movie and I loved looking at Chris Evans in that movie, the thing that jarred me out of that movie, despite the fact that it is a fantasy movie in which a human being is injected with a super serum that creates a superhero, I could suspend all of my belief for that. But the minute I saw a black person and a Japanese person in the same unit as white people during World War II, totally took me out of that movie. And I don't know why it bothers me so much.
They're like a special unit, though.
Yeah, they were a special unit, and I guess that was, like, why. But during, the Army wasn't even integrated until after World War II. And it was a huge deal because Eisenhower did it. And so that's the kind of stuff that I was talking about with credibility.
A choice that was done on purpose, for the sake of diversity.
Right, and I'm glad they did it. But knowing that it wasn't like that historically, I took a double take. I'm like, no, that's not right. So
I would like that they did that.
Yeah, I liked it too. Wait, we have a couple of questions from Scott Cars. I hope I'm saying that right. But first he said, if he can't talk, how do they know he's under 17? In my book, and the answer is that they take x-rays. Because now I realize that the bad guy that he fights isn't very threatening if he just punches him a little bit and he's not really injured. So now it's set in a hospital, and all this happens in the hospital because he's much more severely hurt. And they take x-rays and they can estimate based on his bone development or an age range. That's how. And where did this question come from, the oxygen question?
That's another Scott question.
I know, but, like, it's in our chat. Not.
Oh, I put it in there.
I know, but...
Like, why is he asking the question?
No, like, was it in the YouTube and I just missed it, or...?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine. Anyway, how would an extreme oxygen overdose affect someone? And I don't know specifically off the top of my head exactly how it would go, but I do know that oxygen is toxic, and there's a pretty small percentage of it in the air that we breathe. So if you were like breathing in pure oxygen or something, I don't think that your body would be able to handle it for very long.
Well, and that's why, like, oxygen bars with pure oxygen, it gets you high, right? Because it's...
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So, I mean, I'm sure anything can kill you if you have too much of it. So it'll probably kill you.
Water can
I just don't know how long
much of it.
I don't know how long it would take to kill you off the top of my head. But I'm sure people have tried.
We need another expert to weigh in.
No, you need to do research.
Well, either or. Yeah.
Do research. Yes.
I mean that talking to an expert is research.
Yes, that's true.
Which leads me to, I think, a valuable point that we need to bring up. Anytime that you are reaching out to an expert to talk about the things you need to find out about, preempt that conversation with, "Hi, I'm writing a book about."
Oh, yeah. How do you murder someone and not leave any evidence?
Because the last thing we're going to speak about tonight is questionable Google searches on authors' Chromes. So,
we all have them.
Yeah, we really all do.
Did we hit all of Scott's questions then?
I think so.
Okay, so the next question that we have on our list actually comes from, let me go open up my...
Evan Graham.
Yeah, Evan Graham. And it is, do you want me to read the whole question or do you want me to summarize it?
You can just summarize it.
Okay, so basically this has to do with a synthetic contagion of some kind that sterilizes the entire human population, Children of Men style, which is a fantastic book, or it's book too, right? Book first, movie. Yeah, just fantastic. That could fall under the disease control outbreak umbrella. If you come up with anything, how such a plague might be created, how it might effectively spread across the entire world, or how it could be combated, that would be interesting to me. First, I think the important thing to figure out is what time period you're talking about, because that really impacts the spread. From a historical standpoint, if you're talking about the Spanish flu, that spread pretty quickly, but it was limited to a specific area because of not being able to spread as quickly on airplanes and things like that than it would if you had an outbreak today. So,
assuming if it's synthetic, he's probably talking about current day.
Right now or in the future. But if you're ever talking about any kind of contagion or something like spreading, you need to make sure you understand the time period you're talking about it in, because it really impacts the modes of transportation are going to be a huge play in how that contagion spreads. So if it's something that's modern or in the future, it's obviously going to be much faster. So, well, our expert biologist just got waylaid. So, Evan, we're going to come back to that question in just a second when Kara can put her expert opinion on that. Let's see.
Good nights over there.
Rick Hines asked a sociology question for which I have an exceedingly long answer to that I was actually thinking about while I was in the shower earlier, because it was really bugging me how I was going to answer this question, because it's a huge question with a lot of variables. And he is exploring the exact point in which society breaks down in case of an apocalyptic event. In his example, looking at the world and realizing that the world you live in was not the world you thought it was. Like if something happens and it totally disrupts your viewpoint of the world. So it kind of made me think of like the Matrix, and what happens to Neo when he wakes up and realizes that he was not in an actual human society, but he was a battery and a machine of elaborate other machines making. That was eloquent. Way to go, Beck. But I think the really important thing that was hanging me up in the fact that there are so many variables here is you have to think about society not being an overarching thing. Society is different everywhere. There are different values. There are different expectations. There are different government styles. Society isn't an overarching thing, and I think that we Westerners in democratic countries tend to think of it as an overarching thing, but society is different everywhere. So first off, the first thing you have to sit down and ask yourself is, what culture am I talking about breaking down here? What type of society is going to break down here? Because it's not a world society, okay? It's portioned off depending on what part of the world you live in. And the example that I want to use here in which society breaks down is another sociological thing. And I think it's easier to look at it from this perspective because it's a smaller idea, but still very complex. And the example that I want to use here is the idea that society is a construct. We have to remember that our culture and our values and the society that we live in is something that we've created. Just like we were joking about, people didn't sit around one day and just decide that culture was going to be this, 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 and this. Like, these are the beliefs, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's layers. And so it's something that we are taught. It's ingrained in us. We learn it in school. We learn it in socializing. We learn it through watching TV and other forms of entertainment. So it's something that we are taught. It is not something that's inherent in us. Civilization has only been around for a handful of millennia. That's another really important thing. If we didn't have agriculture, we wouldn't have civilization. We'd still be hunters and gatherers. So you have to remember it's something we learn. That being said, the example that I want to use in breaking down is another social construct that we are all familiar with, and that is gender. Gender is something that is taught to us. Okay? There's boys and there's girls, and girls are taught one way and boys are taught another. We are not biologically or inherently designed to think or act one way. We are taught that because of the society we live in, which is also a construct. Now I'm getting really deep. So I want you guys to think about this when you think about, okay, what would happen when society breaks down? Because with all of the recent transgender issues that have been cropping up and the things with bathrooms and transgender rights and other LGBTQ things, the biggest thing that disrupts people is that when something you've been taught as a truth your entire life suddenly feels like a lie, you get very frustrated by that. So when you are raised your entire life that boys are one way and girls are another way, and it's black and white, which is a very natural thing for humans to do. We need to compartmentalize things. That's the way our brain works, is we have to put things in boxes, label and categorize them, because that's how our brains work. Now, it's not the best thing for, you know, social justice and equality, but that's the way our brains work, and we have to deal with that.
Well, that's not how the world actually is.
Right.
It's
and
just
so
how we wrap our heads around it.
Yeah, it's just how human beings rationalize things. You know.
Well,
so
I mean,
boys,
and I'll just side comment. It's not necessarily a bad thing to categorize things. What more becomes a social justice problem is when the enforcement of the categorization begins to negatively affect individuals or groups of people. So, like, society doesn't necessarily have to enforce gender in ways that are harmful. Like, it's not a requirement. We don't have to punish people for not acting the right way.
It's just been that way for so long, people think it's a truth.
Right. But it doesn't have to be that.
No, it doesn't have to be at all. You're very right. Yeah. But it's just the way, you know, it's become ingrained in our society. And so when you want to think about society, like the point at which society breaks down, you have to think at what point do the facts that we have believed, that we are trained to believe are truth, are completely undestroyable facts, when we are faced with another truth that counteracts that. Okay? So if you are a person who has been raised your entire life to believe boys are one way, girls are another, it's black and white, they don't cross, there's nothing about them that's shared, you know, girls like pink, boys like blue, girls like dolls, boys like trucks.
Which was only the case for about 100 years.
Yeah.
It used to be the opposite.
Yeah.
The
pink was for boys, blue was for girls, so that's a whole other thing. But these are things
that's a good example of,
I think it's been less
that we get taught,
actually.
Yeah, so the point
here that happened, but
the point that you have to realize is we've been taught these things, and when somebody decides to accept that they believe that they are not the gender they were born with, that takes the two boxes that we have compartmentalized boys and girls into and blurs them. And suddenly an undeniable fact, something that we believe is true, then becomes something that's blurred. And we can't reconcile that in our brains. So I think the best way to understand at what point society would break down is at what point, what is the value, the purest belief that society has, depending on what society you choose, what culture you choose. What is the one thing that if you revealed to that society that the one thing they had been taught their entire lives is not true, that's the point in which society breaks. Now, there isn't always one thing that society is wrapped around. There are layers, like we've talked about. But if there's one thing that a society hinges on, or multiple things that a society hinges on, if suddenly those are revealed to be lies, that's the point in which society breaks. So I think the best thing that Rick can do is sit down and look at the society he's creating. And it seems like he's writing about apocalyptic stuff. Maybe it's in the future. Things might have changed. What values does your specific society embrace and hold as truth? And what would happen when those values are gone? Is it money? Is it religion? Is it some kind of belief in some social moray? What is it that holds the society together? And if you took that away, what would happen? Another important thing that I think you need to take into account too is society doesn't impact everybody equally. So if it's an apocalyptic event that's going to impact them on an economic level, people at the top are going to be much more impacted than people at the bottom, because people at the bottom are already used to scraping by. So if things become truly bad and an economic disaster, the people on the bottom are going to be much better equipped to deal with that. They're going to depend on each other. They're going to share. They're going to be resourceful because they're trained to do that. If it's a situation like with children of men in the last example that we talked about with Evan, which Carrie, you need to come back and answer because we broke away to the next question while Tally was...
I know, I heard.
Okay. If it's a situation with children of men where suddenly women can't have children anymore, where you have a depleting population, if it's a situation where only one gender is now reproducing and the other one is now becoming extinct, like what are the things that are going to change in that society? And what facts and truths are going to break down and cause disruptions? If it's a society where women have been oppressed for a very long time and suddenly women become a majority of the population, that could cause societal breakdown, even though women are the majority, just because the few men that are left are going to be outraged and be very upset. So I think that the best thing that Rick can do is sit down and look at the society he has built. If it's designed on a real one, research that real society or that culture, figure out what are the most important links in that society, understand that those are social constructs, and if they were revealed to be lies, what would you do in that situation? What if the one thing you thought was true more than anything else turned out to be a lie? How would you react? And then look at the individual people in that society that would be impacted and how they would be impacted, because it's going to be different for everybody. So, okay, that being said, that was a really long-winded answer that I thought of in the shower today. So, Kara, can you please come back and explain from your experience with the health department, since you were just talking about contagion, what would be the most effective way that a contagion could spread, or how could we combat it?
And he did say
it doesn't have to,
times.
I am more interested in what's the most interesting way a contagion could spread, as opposed to most effective, because, it depends on what the time period of your story is, but
he did say
it's got to be at least, it has to be over months and years, because nobody's going to realize that everybody on the planet has become infertile, in the space of a few days or weeks. That will be impossible to know. There are so many different ways you could do it. You could just name a way, and it's probably true. But if you don't know the way diseases are spread, it could be something. Lately, I'm, of course, a fan of, not a fan of, aware of mosquito-borne illnesses, like Zika is a new one that everybody's talking about. That is both transmitted by mosquitoes and sexually transmitted, which is like a 1-2 punch of the really effective ways to transmit a disease. So if you wanted to design something, you could design something that's spread by mosquitoes and or sexually transmitted. But I was thinking, if it's synthetic, you could do something that spreads itself, like
the makeup in the first Batman movie.
Like the what?
The makeup that the Joker put whatever into.
Okay, sure, you could put stuff in makeup, yeah, But no, I was thinking, like, if you got a section of genetic code or something into seeds for a type of plant like wheat or rice. If you get into wheat and rice and corn, and potatoes, wheat, rice, corn, potatoes, then you would pretty much have the whole planet. You could get everybody.
And it could grows their own food.
Well,
Although they'd have to
but if
buy
it's the sort
seeds
of
at some
thing
point.
that like stuff like cross pollinates or anything, yeah, there are always people. It's hard to get 100% of anything, you know.
Well, and it would be a lot easier too, because if you look at places like Monsanto, I mean, they own such a huge percentage of the seed markets. You know, it's really hard to get seed if you're any kind of commercial farmer that's not through a corporation as huge as Monsanto. So if you could get it into the corporation first, it would be really easy because they're global.
Right. So seeds, yeah, get it into the food supply is one good way to do it, or getting the disease into any animal that can transmit zoonotic diseases, so diseases that go from animals to humans and back again. So pigs are very common. Chickens, any type of poultry probably. If you can get animals to spread it, that is a good way to get it to go all around the world, because it doesn't just have to go from person to person. It can go from animal to animal to animal, and animals get shipped everywhere. So that's another good way to do it. And I would alter something that spreads really well. That's another way too. You could just shove in another piece of code that makes a person infertile somehow. There are lots of ways to make somebody infertile.
I think the best way to do it though is with
something that has that is very effective at spreading, like measles or chickenpox too. And then, oh yeah, and that was my idea that I came up with. It should combine something with, like, could be a future or present day where anti-vaxxers are really they've become really effective. Like maybe they've got legislation through where vaccines are outlawed or something, and so diseases are spreading like crazy already, and then people start being infertile, and it can be just this horrible nightmare.
I think the grain would work better than animal fun.
Because don't have it be put in the vaccines, okay? Do not do that, because you do not need to add to anti-vax nonsense.
Oh, God, get me started on that.
No. Don't do that, okay? Don't do that.
No, my thought with the grains, though, that's a good idea, because they're, people outside the West don't realize how few places, like parts of Asia and parts of Africa and parts of Latin America, meat is a luxury, and so they might only eat meat 1 or 2, maybe 3 days a week at best. And so where, most Western American people eat meat at every meal, or at least every day, that's a luxury for us. So if you were putting it in the grains that a lot of people depend on, that would be a surefire way to get it around the world at a faster rate than, say, chicken. So you could spread it across the Western world faster with meat, probably. But I think if you wanted to get it across the...
Knock on wood during this conversation.
Yeah, there are just psychopaths just taking notes tonight. Like, yes.
No, it would take an awful lot of effort to do something like this. Yeah. But the thing is that what people don't realize is that it doesn't have to affect that much of the population for it to be really, really cataclysmic. Like, you don't have to get 100% fertility across the planet to still send us into a downward spiral of too little fertility to repopulate the planet, and we've got serious problems. Like if you could even affect 10 or 20% of the population with infertility, it would still be a huge disaster over the next few generations. It would be scary stuff.
Right.
And Scott asks, is there a way to refertilize people? Well, that would just depend on the way that they were infertilized. I mean, you can just make stuff up because this is speculative fiction, so just speculate something that could exist in the future. You could have nanobots reconstruct people's...
There you go. That worked out so well for Wesley Crusher. That being said, I want to thank everybody who sent in questions for us via Twitter or
I have one more question.
Whatever.
Oh, yeah, you have a
Christine.
You have a question.
This is sort of a question.
I know we have one more question. It's called a build-up.
Oh. Okay.
God. once again.
Sounded like a wrap-up.
Thank you. No, I can't even with you people tonight. This is what happens when Joe leaves. So anyway, once again, I want to say thank you to all you guys who sent in questions, whether it was Twitter or through YouTube tonight. But before I was so rudely interrupted, what I was about to say is that our last question we've saved for last is the most important.
Clearly the most important.
The most important, and that's why we saved it for last. And I'm going to let Christine answer that because Ricardo Enriquez wants to know why the hell polar bears are on the list.
Well, Ricardo, you wanted us to answer that live, so we're going to do that. So the rest of my drinkables have jobs that like really lend themselves well to this research topic, where I don't, unless you're going to be writing a novel about like typesetting an application or making invoices go through a system or making sure things are in stock in a warehouse. Like, you're probably not going to write about that.
You should have put questions about logistics.
Yeah. So it's more fun to go with the wild card topics. So that's what I did. I just put a grab bag of
Are you going to tell us a polar bear fact?
topics. Yes, I am. So I put polar bears because they're my favorite animal. And once upon a time, I did a research paper on them. And the only thing I really remember, so I'm kind of glad no one like actually asked a question about polar bears, because I only remember one thing, and that is.
Well, that was false advertising.
Oh, I took a gamble.
Ask me all the
Paid off.
questions about polar bears, but only this one question that I remember.
It worked out. So polar bears have black skin under their white fur, which basically makes them like the drow of the animal kingdom.
I love that.
I love polar bears so much. I haven't told you this before, but I love them. When I see them at the zoo, I am like, polar bears.
Oh, you should see my
I love them.
I have a Pinterest board that's just for cute animals, and there's a lot of polar bears.
You should share that.
I will.
Send us a link.
Did you guys know?
Ladies' Night, cute animal pictures.
Yes.
Did you guys know that there is such a thing as a growler bear? And that's because of all of the climate change going on. Polar bears are coming further south, and grizzly bears are going further north because it's getting warmer, and they can interbreed.
Really?
But Scott says they're called
Look, you know more than me.
and not grow.
No, they're growler bears.
Oh, okay. So, well, I guess that's the answer to your question, Scott. They are
Scott
called.
saying, I don't have the over.
He says, "Why is a polar bear grizzly hybrid called a pizzly and not a growler?"
I don't know if that's the technical name. The only reason I call them growler bears is
You're
because
just making stuff up.
It's like
no,
a
I'm not
labradoodle.
making stuff
Like,
up.
it's
I am
not a
not.
real
Chris
thing.
Hardwick was making stuff up, and Chris Hardwick is a national
Oh.
treasure, and so if he said it, it must be true. Because he owns the
That is
internet.
a good way to do research. Just find somebody and say
Just quote
whatever
someone.
they say is true.
No, I've never heard it called a pizzly. That's a horrible name.
That is a horrible name.
That is.
Awful.
We agree.
So, but yes,
It's an official Drinkshares opinion.
regardless of what they are called, grizzly hybrid or grizzly polar bear hybrid mixes are a thing, and they have been found more and more in Canada and Russia because of climate change. So, I think that's all our questions. I'll ask our other members tonight because I would hate to cut anybody's question off.
There's something about the IRA.
Oh yes, thank you. There was
We
that.
don't have time for an entire history
I
lesson.
don't.
Just so you
And
know.
the thing is, I
Don't have
couldn't
time for it.
possibly give an entire history lesson on that. The only thing you need to know about the IRA that's important, Scott, is the difference between the religion. Okay, you have to understand the reason Northern Ireland exists and the reason that Ireland is not part of the United Kingdom anymore is because in 1920, Ireland broke away and got its independence, like Scotland has been trying to do for a really long time. The biggest problem between the United Kingdom and Ireland is the United Kingdom is Protestant, and Ireland is Catholic. That is why Northern Ireland still is part of the United Kingdom because they are majority Protestant. Now that also has to do a lot with the potato famine and why they struggled so much because when food was coming out of Ireland during the potato famine, it was going to the United Kingdom and not staying within Ireland, and that's why so many people starved. That's like a whole other thing, and I did write a paper about that too, but I do remember facts about it. So if you want to know about that, just message me on Inkshares or tweet me or something, Scott, because I could talk about not specifically the IRA, but the whole conflict between Ireland and the United Kingdom. Like that's like a whole day. So if you want to know specifically about that, just message me and we'll talk about that later. But let's see. Yeah, I think we've hit everything. So
Potatoes.
Potatoes.
I vote potato.
Potatoes.
I do love potatoes, and I get so pissed off when people are like, "Why didn't they just eat something else?" Like, there's a whole reason. There's like so many reasons.
Time for the history.
I know. So I know we know we're running out of time. So to close tonight, I believe Christine, is that your drunk opinion in there? Or is that Carrot? Okay.
That is my drunk opinion. All right.
You're not.
Are we ready for drunk opinions?
Yeah, we're ready for drunk opinions.
Okay. Why is Drake a thing?
I don't know. I don't understand the appeal.
Like, his singing isn't singing, and it's really, really auto-tuned, and even after being auto-tuned, it's really off-key. So I don't understand why it's on the radio.
Is there a specific song that you heard that instigated this for you?
There's one that's on there right now, but like I've been noticing this for a while. His inability to sing. I don't get it.
I don't listen.
It's a thing that some people connect with. I don't know.
I don't listen to pop and hip hop because I'm a loser. So I don't understand why he's a thing either. But I know that a lot of teenagers like him, and since I've surrounded myself with teenagers for some unknown reason,
like seen as very, very sexy by many a lady and men out there too, I'm sure. But as far as like having songs that people listen to, I don't get it.
Well, maybe they just put him on in the background, and it's supposed to not distract you while you get down to business.
So what you're saying is maybe Joe and Brenda are playing some Drake right now?
Maybe. Well, Joe is in the chat.
That's so sad.
Oh, is Joe back? He must be done with that.
I hope he's not multitasking.
Thanks for joining us, Joe. Oh my God, you think he's chatting
this
while?
Let's hope
that being said, my unsolicited advice for you tonight is probably a little controversial, and we didn't quite agree on it when we were having our meeting the other day, but my unsolicited advice is do not use Wikipedia as a source. I know that has changed the world and the internet, but the teacher in me can't let go of the fact that it is not a valuable resource, that you can literally change it at any point. You don't have to have any kind of credibility to change this thing. So Wikipedia, you really have to be careful because you never know what people are putting on there and how factual it is.
Agree to disagree.
And I disagree.
I disagree too.
I think if you're writing,
at least Wikipedia is honest about it, and you can go down to the sources.
That was the point I was going to make.
Textbooks and stuff are like, just trust us, and it's often one-sided nonsense.
Okay, first off, textbooks also put their credentials in the back.
But okay, well, they are able to present things as though this is the facts, and also the structure of how they work is like this, 20 chapters on white men history, 1 chapter on black history, 1 chapter on women.
It's just because you're not reading the right books, Kara.
Well, I'm not reading any books because I'm not in school right now. But I'm just saying, Wikipedia, you search for the topic that you want to learn about, and you can look at the sources behind all of them and analyze them for yourself. And if you do the work, it's just as good as any other source of information.
It's great to know moderate, and that was the point I was going to make. My unsolicited advice about Wikipedia was not to use it as your end-all, be-all. Because
multiple sources is always a good thing.
Sorry, Christine, what?
Multiple sources.
Yeah, if I was going to have a student write a paper and they used Wikipedia as a source, they'd get 0. And that's any school is going to do that. Any teacher worth their salt is going to do that.
But, Becky, you're really focused on, historical papers and novels, I'm assuming, and things that are talking about factual events. But many people aren't talking about actual events. So if you're just trying to get inspiration and to feed your subconscious with ideas, go at it. It's not going to hurt.
It's fine to look at. Just don't use it as a source. Don't use it as anything credible. And if you absolutely do want to use credit, go to the sources that are listed down at the bottom, like Kara was saying, and go to those places.
Be writing a novel about factual things. Definitely be thorough with your research and use multiple sources, just as they teach you in school. Don't go to one place only for your information.
Yeah, and if you want inspiration, Wikipedia is okay, but there's Pinterest. Why would you use Wikipedia when you can use Pinterest? Pinterest changes, like, it just fixes everything. So my unsolicited advice, and it's controversial and nobody agrees with it, but it's fine. I hate Wikipedia.
Well,
I
it
think it's room of
applies to certain
education.
situations, but not all.
I don't know how many times we've had to give kids zeros on papers because they literally just copied the Wikipedia and pasted it. And the funniest thing is the easiest way for me to catch you is to use a word that I know you misspell and spell it right. And I hate to say that, but the easiest way to catch kids plagiarizing is when they don't mess up on their papers. Because
Well, most
so
of us
bad.
authors aren't kids writing high school
No,
history and
but
sociology
still.
papers.
The two reasons
I mean, if your point is don't plagiarize, then yeah
don't
definitely don't plagiarize.
don't be
but-
Melania Trump. Don't be Melania Trump.
Yeah, don't plagiarize. But Wikipedia is great.
But the two horror stories that I always think about are I had a college professor that would go on and change stuff on Wikipedia to screw kids up, and I heard a story about a kid who started to do his thesis using Wikipedia on a topic that didn't actually exist.
Yeah. But like we said, it really depends on what you're writing about, and if you're writing about space aliens or dwarves or fairies, like it's okay to use Wikipedia for that research.
I just think there's lots of better resources. But that being said, that's my unsolicited opinion. Like you said, I knew people weren't going to agree with me, but I'm okay. I'm going to stand firm on that. I believe that Wikipedia is the devil. Any other drunk opinions before we leave tonight?
I wish I had a drunk opinion.
How many more months
Joe.
do you have?
I should have pregnant opinions. Is what I should have.
Oh yeah, you should have pregnant
Opinions.
How many more months before you can have a drunk opinion? Because you're gonna be feeding
Yeah.
the baby afterwards.
Yes,
So
I will be breastfeeding. Yes. So probably a while. It's gonna be a while.
More water for you.
on that sad and depressing note, I want to thank
everybody.
everybody for joining us tonight. I'm gonna mess this up. Joe's really good. That's another thing I miss about Joe tonight is the obligatory thank yous that he always does. So thank you for tweeting, thank you for following, thank you for supporting us, thank you for buying copies of our books, thank you for all
Thank
the
you for
stuff that you
asking
do.
questions.
Thank you for asking
Yes.
questions.
We appreciate
Gosh,
that.
that would be really sad if we got no questions.
Yeah, and they were
Super
good
thank you.
questions too. They were
They were.
deep, complicated, thought-provoking things that I had to think about, which is why I did it in the shower because that's where I do my best thinking. So.
Please.
That being said, we thank you for joining us tonight. Our next show will be Christine.
That will be about coping with such things as dyslexia, ADHD, stress, anxiety, imposter syndrome, all those fun things you go through, especially when you're crowdfunding.
Yeah, all the mental issues and things like that that
writing.
crop up.
It's our mental health episode.
Yeah.
Which I'm actually really excited about talking about that because I'm currently in the process of transitioning from being a social studies teacher to a special ed teacher, and I'm taking courses that specifically talk about how to work with kids who have ADHD and dyslexia and reading comprehension and mental deficits and things like that, and anxiety and depression. So it's going to be really interesting to take the stuff that I'm freshly learning and apply it to problems and issues for writers, because one of the common things about being a writer, being an artist in general, is that we tend to get slapped with the mental health issue that we're all, we all have some kind of darkness inside us. A lot of famous writers and artists were alcoholics or drug addicts that came from dark places in their mental space. So I think it's going to be a really thought-provoking episode, and I hope that you guys join us in 2 weeks for that, which would be in August. What date was that, Christine?
Ooh. The next one.
Yeah.
2 weeks from today.
Yeah, 2 weeks from today.
Just
Figure it
2
out.
weeks from now.
2 weeks.
So
Just look at a calendar. You'll be fine.
I could, but it requires me to click. So
No, I'm talking to the viewers. Just
Yeah,
look
I
at the
know.
calendar.
Is that,
Really
is
fine.
that true?
I know what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
Joe, you were missed tonight. We'll be glad that you're back in
We
2
miss
weeks,
you,
mostly,
Joe.
so you
Yeah.
can make Zencaster work. But other
And we
than
miss
that,
Brenda too.
and Brenda, yeah.
Yeah.
Brenda, probably more, but don't tell Joe. So we love you guys both, and we missed you tonight. So.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks for
Thanks for
everybody
coming.
to chat. And as always,
Good night.
may your drinks be
May
shared.
May your
Be
drinks
shared.
be shared.
Yay.
Which is not a good public health practice, by the way. Okay, good night.
May your waters be shared.
Yeah, like with the same
But
cup. Don't drink
with-
from the same cup.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, good night.
Bye.